My name's Kristen Carberry, and our farm is Carberry Farm Corporation. We grow corn, soybeans, wheat, and hay, as well as a cover crop, which is usually oats and peas. Typically, we plant our crops in the early spring when soil conditions and weather permit, as well as in the fall for our winter wheat. So we plant winter wheat in the fall, so that way it has a chance to overwinter to go into reproductive stages in the spring. So usually we take off corn silage first in early September. Next would be usually soybeans, just because their maturity and harvest moisture is usually down where we'd like it to be. Usually around 13% would be the ideal moisture. Anything that gets drier, we run into some harvest issues, as well as anything that's too wet, we would be paying a lot for drying costs. Following that is grain corn, and typically with that, we're just trying to take things off, weather permitting, and hoping to get things done before Christmas. For wheat, we usually take that off in the summer, and that gives us an opportunity usually to put it in a cover crop. So cover crop, as the name implies, as giving us some ground cover. It's good for adding that biomass to the soil. It prevents erosion, as well as is good for weed suppression, and at times can also be an additional feed source for our animals. We have a tractor that's usually attached to an implement for tillage that does the seedbed preparation for us. And then we have different planters for different crops. So typically we have a corn planter that spaces corn seed out for 30-inch rows, and then beans, we do both 7.5 and 15 inches, just based on different field conditions and variety selection. And for wheat, it's usually a drill for that. There's a sprayer that we use in season for different pesticide or nutritional applications. Those are usually done by scouting. Could be 1 to 3 to 4 passes, just depending on the year and conditions that we're dealing with. Last, for harvesting, we have a harvester that takes the majority of the corn plant for harvest for the cattle. And then we have a combine that would have different head attachments for different row spacing for those other crops. There's 5 of us on the farm. It is a family operation. So my in-laws, my husband, my brother-in-law, and myself, and that also includes the work for the dairy farm. You can do everything right, but at the end of the day, you're really just at the will of the weather. And so I think that Paul Harvey says it best, that we owe it all to 6 inches of topsoil and the fact that it rains. For us, it all comes back to the soil. So we're always making sure that we're first starting off with a soil sample that lets us understand the nutritional components of the soil, also that soil type and organic matter, and how we need to be treating that soil. We also look at our crop rotation to make sure that we are not only taking from the soil, but also using crops that can also give back. And also incorporating cover crops where we can too. So this provides a more stable, consistent yield across all crops for us. And so it's all about soil health for us, which also is directly tied to the environment. Our crops need rain, so water imbibition, get that seed to sprout, and then sunlight and nutrition. So nutritional components for our crops, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, and micronutrients depending on each crop. So those nutritional components are just like you and I. We all have those requirements. They're an extremely high demand for a crop. So starting from seed to full maturity would just be like a young child that has high needs as they are growing at a fast rate, and crops are the same way. For corn, it could go for animal or human consumption as well as fuel. For us here, it could go to the dog food plant or to a feed mill. For soybeans, it usually goes for crush for oil, and for our wheat, because it's soft red wheat, it goes towards things like cakes and pastries. So I think that most people don't understand that farmers care so much for the environment, because it all does come down to soil health for us to be productive.